Business Essentials Podcast. Unlock your career.
Learn to speak business English like a pro.
Ever been in a meeting where everyone's nodding along and you're thinking, wait, what are we actually talking about? That moment of panic. Do I speak up and risk looking lost? Or do I just smile and figure it out later? I'm Marcus, and today we're tackling how to ask for clarity without seeming incompetent. Sarah's here to explain why your brain literally cannot process all incoming information, the exact phrases that make you sound more credible when you admit confusion, and why organizations lose $62.4 million annually because people nod along instead of asking questions. We're also focusing on professional clarification language throughout, so listen for those phrases. Sarah, why does asking for clarification feel so risky?
Hey Marcus, thanks for having me on. Most people view asking for clarification as admitting they're not smart enough to understand, but neuroscience research shows something completely different. When you ask clarifying questions, you're actually demonstrating intellectual rigor, not incompetence. What's really happening is a brain mechanism called neural coupling. During successful communication, your brain activity literally synchronizes with the speaker's brain activity. This is measurable on fMRI scans.
Wait, our brains actually sync up?
They do. When listeners fail to ask clarifying questions, this neural synchronization either weakens or never fully forms. You're left operating with completely different mental models of the same situation. And here's the cost. 75% of all communication problems in workplaces are caused by misunderstandings that could have been prevented by one person having the courage to ask for clarification.
So the problem isn't the asking, it's the not asking.
Exactly. And organizations pay massively for this. Large companies lose $62.4 million annually, while smaller firms lose $420,000 per 1,000 employees, largely due to rework and misalignment caused by unclarified communication. People execute plans based on incomplete information, waste resources, and then have to redo everything.
All right, so tell me, what's actually happening in the brain when someone needs to ask for clarification but doesn't?
Great question. So your brain has a selective attention system that actively filters incoming information. You can't process everything simultaneously, so your brain prioritizes based on what seems relevant. The problem is that information you unconsciously deem threatening to your self-image gets actively suppressed. You're hearing words, but you're filtering out essential context without even realizing it.
For our listeners learning English, what does filter out mean?
Filter out means to actively remove or exclude something from what you're processing. Think of a coffee filter. It lets liquid through but blocks grounds. Your brain does the same with information. It lets through what it considers relevant and blocks what it considers irrelevant or threatening. In business, we talk about filtering information or screening data when we're discussing attention and focus. You might also say tune out or block out, but filter out is the most professional phrasing.
So basically, I'm not hearing everything even when I think I am.
Exactly. Your brain's working memory can only hold roughly 4 to 7 discrete items at once. When stressed or anxious, your filtering becomes less discriminate and more biased. Information you unconsciously label "not for me" gets suppressed. And you're typically unaware of what you've filtered out, which creates the dangerous illusion of complete understanding.
Give me an example. What does this look like in practice?
Perfect. Imagine your manager says, "We need to prioritize the customer-facing features in the next sprint." Now, internally, your brain might be confused. What counts as customer-facing? Does that include back-end infrastructure customers never see but that impacts their experience? Does it include admin features? And which customers? Enterprise clients or all of them? But instead of asking, you nod. Your brain fills the gaps with assumptions. You proceed based on your interpretation, which might be completely different from what your manager meant.
So I'm confidently executing the wrong thing.
Completely wrong thing. And this is where confirmation bias kicks in. Your brain unconsciously interprets ambiguous information in ways that confirm your pre-existing beliefs. This isn't intentional or rational. It's automatic cognitive processing under load. When you hear something ambiguous and don't ask for clarification, your brain defaults to what it already believes rather than seeking new information.
That's a good phrase, fills the gaps. Is that common in business English?
Very common. Fill the gaps or fill in the gaps means to provide missing information or to complete something that's incomplete. In meetings, you might say, "Can you fill in the gaps about the timeline?" Or, "I'm filling in the gaps with assumptions and I need clarification." Native speakers also use bridge the gap when talking about connecting two different points, but fill the gaps specifically refers to adding missing details. It's definitely B2 to C1 level phrasing.
What about the shame piece? What stops people from just asking?
This is critical. Shame activates the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, and suppresses the prefrontal cortex, which is your rational thinking area. When individuals experience shame or fear judgment, their brains shift into threat response mode. The person remains aware they're missing information while being neurologically unable to bridge the gap. It's not a conscious choice to stay silent. Their brain is actively generating anxiety signals that make asking feel unsafe.
So it's a neurological paralysis, not a decision.
Exactly. And this is particularly pronounced in people with histories of criticism or neglect. Status anxiety in hierarchical workplaces amplifies this response. Younger professionals and women experience neurologically intensified barriers because of additional social judgment they face. The advice to just ask the question fails because the person isn't consciously choosing silence. Their threat system is active.
So how do you actually ask for clarification in a way that feels safe? Walk me through it.
So the framework is called the CLARITY-Protokoll. Phase 1. Calibrate your mindset. Before asking, you must reframe the internal narrative from "asking shows weakness" to "asking shows intellectual rigor." You're demonstrating analytical engagement, not admitting inadequacy. Research shows 75% of managers believe active listening is essential to leadership. They respect people who seek clarity.
So you're changing how you think about the question itself.
Exactly. Phase 2. Listen actively and notice where confusion arises. Most people pretend to understand because they don't notice the moment confusion happens. You need to monitor your own comprehension in real time. Notice when your brain creates an assumption rather than receiving clear information. If you're more than 70% confident, you're probably nodding along despite gaps.
So you're tracking your own certainty level.
Yes, exactly. Phase 3. Ask specific, high-resolution clarifying questions. Vague questions like, "Does that make sense?" fail because they don't force actual clarification. You need to target the exact point of confusion. Instead of, "Can you clarify?" you'd say, "When you mentioned scalable, were you thinking about infrastructure capacity, code architecture, or team size?" You're pinpointing the ambiguity.
That's a good phrase, high-resolution questions. How would you use that in a real meeting?
You wouldn't typically say high-resolution questions in a meeting. That's more of a framework term. But the concept means asking specific, detailed questions that drill down into exactly what you don't understand. In a meeting, you'd say things like, "I want to clarify one specific point," or, "Can you walk me through an example of what that would look like?" The key is being precise rather than vague. Native speakers also say, "Drill down into the details," or "Get more specific," when they want this level of clarity.
And phase 4?
Phase 4. Verify and summarize. After you've asked your clarifying question and received an answer, you must paraphrase what you heard and ask for confirmation. You might say, "So what I'm hearing is we're keeping the team the same size, but eliminating lower revenue projects to focus on the 3 biggest opportunities. Is that right?" This creates a closed loop where both parties confirm shared understanding before proceeding.
So you're making sure the clarification actually worked.
Exactly. Research shows the paraphrase and verify technique prevents 95% of downstream misalignment. Clarification without verification prevents only 35% of potential misunderstandings because partial understanding remains hidden. You think you got it, but you actually didn't.
Give me the exact phrases. What should someone actually say?
Perfect. Opening phrases. These are how you start the clarification request. You'd say, I want to make sure I have this right before I proceed. This signals analytical rigor and shared commitment to accuracy. Or, help me understand your thinking on this. This positions the other person as the expert and invites them to explain. Or, before I move forward, I want to confirm one thing. This creates urgency and demonstrates you're taking the task seriously.
So you're framing it as professional diligence, not confusion.
Right. Inquiry phrases. These are the actual questions. You'd say, when you say, what specifically do you mean by that? This targets ambiguous language directly. Or, can you walk me through an example of what that would look like? This forces concrete demonstration rather than abstract explanation. Or, what would success look like from your perspective? This clarifies intent and desired outcomes.
Can you give me that last phrase exactly? How would I say that?
You'd say, what would success look like from your perspective? It's particularly useful when executing on vague directives because it anchors to measurable results rather than subjective interpretation. You could also say, how will we know when this is done successfully? Or, what does a successful outcome mean to you? But, what would success look like from your perspective is the most common phrasing in professional settings at B2 to C1 level.
What about verification phrases? How do you close the loop?
Verification phrases confirm your understanding. You'd say, so what I'm hearing is, followed by your summarized understanding, then, is that right? This classic paraphrasing technique demonstrates that you've listened and invites the speaker to correct you if your interpretation missed something. Or you could say, let me make sure I've got this straight. Followed by point 1, point 2, and point 3, then ask, did I get all of that? This approach summarizes multiple clarifications simultaneously.
So you're literally repeating back what you heard in your own words.
In your own words, yes. This is critical because it reveals whether you actually understood or just heard words. If your paraphrase doesn't match their meaning, they'll correct you immediately. And here's what's interesting. When you ask clarifying questions this way, you're actually triggering the other person's brain reward system. Functional MRI studies show that when people perceive they're being actively listened to, their reward circuits activate. They experience dopamine release.
Wait, so asking questions makes them feel good?
It makes them feel valued and understood at a neurochemical level. Mirror neurons in both parties' brains synchronize, creating empathy and connection. The person being questioned gives fuller, more honest answers to those who demonstrate genuine interest. Relationship bonds strengthen through the experience of being truly understood.
Imagine someone's in a performance review and they don't understand the feedback. Walk me through how they'd use this framework.
Perfect scenario. So the manager says, you did great work, but you need to be more proactive. The employee is internally confused. Proactive how? More meetings? Better documentation? More volunteering for projects? They don't know. Phase 1. Calibrate mindset. The employee thinks, asking for specifics shows I want to improve, not that I'm incompetent. Phase 2. Notice confusion. They recognize proactive is ambiguous. Phase 3. Ask specific question. They say, I appreciate that feedback. When you say proactive, can you give me a specific example of a situation where you'd like me to have initiated action?
So they're asking for a concrete example, not just accepting the vague term.
Exactly. The manager responds, yes, last month we needed a technical specification written for the client project, and you waited for me to assign it. I would have appreciated you flagging that it needed doing and volunteering. Now the employee has actionable information. Phase 4. Verify. The employee says, got it. So, proactive means identifying gaps and offering solutions before being asked. The manager confirms. Exactly. Now the employee knows what to change.
That's really different from just nodding and saying, I'll be more proactive.
Completely different. Without clarification, the employee would have guessed what proactive meant and probably guessed wrong. With clarification, they have a clear behavioral target. And research shows this matters. Asking for clarification in real time prevents 85% of downstream mistakes. Delayed clarification prevents only 15 to 20% of potential errors because decisions have already been made.
What's another common mistake? What else do people get wrong?
Biggest mistake? Apologizing excessively. People preface questions with, "I'm sorry, but," or "This is probably a dumb question," or "I might be confused, but." This signals shame and incompetence, which actually reduces the likelihood of receiving complete answers. The listener's brain interprets apologetic language as a signal that the asker isn't capable of handling nuance.
So the apology makes it worse.
Makes it worse. The right way is stating clarification requests with confidence. Instead of, "I'm sorry, I'm probably wrong, but," you'd say, "I want to confirm the timeline before I proceed," or "Help me understand the decision-making process here." This sounds professional and thoughtful. Research shows managers who frame clarification requests as analytical engagement receive 60% more detailed and honest responses than those who apologize.
Before we wrap up, let's recap the key terms we talked about today.
Sure. The main ones were filter out, fill the gaps, and drill down into. Filter out means to actively remove or exclude information from what you're processing. Fill the gaps means to provide missing information or complete something incomplete. And drill down into means to examine something in detail, to get more specific about a topic.
Great. So our listeners can use these terms when they're seeking clarification in meetings, verifying understanding with colleagues, or confirming task requirements. All right, so the big takeaway here is asking for clarification isn't admitting incompetence. It's demonstrating intellectual rigor. The Clarity Protocol gives you the structure. Calibrate your mindset to reframe asking as strength, listen actively, and notice where confusion arises. Ask specific, high-resolution questions. Verify with paraphrasing, and execute with confirmed alignment. Research shows this approach prevents 95% of downstream misalignment, triggers reward systems in the other person's brain, and actually makes you look more competent, not less. Sarah, what's the one thing you want people to take from this?
Please, stop pretending you understand when you don't. The skill isn't about never being confused. It's about having the confidence to seek clarity when confusion arises. When you use the phrases we discussed, "I want to make sure I have this right," "Walk me through an example," "What would success look like from your perspective?" You're signaling analytical engagement. Practice the framework and watch how people respond. They respect the questions.
Here's what we want from listeners. Try the Clarity Protocol in your next meeting or conversation. Notice when confusion arises. Ask one specific clarifying question using the phrases we discussed. Verify your understanding by paraphrasing back.
And if you've been nodding along and pretending to understand, this is your permission to stop. Asking for clarity is a strength, not a weakness.
So next episode, we're diving into something that really separates strategic professionals from those who accidentally derail meetings. How to change the agenda without annoying everyone. You know those moments when the meeting is clearly going off track, or there's something critical that wasn't included? Most people either stay silent and let the meeting waste everyone's time, or they awkwardly blurt out, "Can we talk about something else instead?" and immediately create tension. We're breaking down the exact phrases that let you redirect conversation without appearing controlling, the neuroscience of why people resist agenda changes even when they agree the current discussion isn't valuable, and how to gauge whether proposing a change will be received as helpful or hostile. This episode will teach you how to steer conversations toward what actually matters without damaging relationships or looking like you're hijacking the meeting.
Oh, I love that one. Knowing how to redirect without ruffling feathers is such a high-level skill. Can't wait.
Right? It's subtle but powerful. Sarah, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you being here and sharing all of this.
My pleasure, Marcus. And everyone out there, challenge yourselves this week. Ask for clarification on something you don't fully understand. Practice that phrase. See how people actually respect you more for it.
Exactly. Be brave and ask. All right, everyone. We'll be back next time with more practical skills. Until then, keep growing.
See you soon.
Business Essentials Podcast. Unlock your career.
Learn to speak business English like a pro.